Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit. Welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. In late 1600s and early 1700s, faith and morality in America was on the wane. Drunkenness and revelry were quite common in our communities, and many ministers felt that the church was in decline. But early in the 18th century, Jonathan Edwards, seeing this same problem in his New England community, began to preach the gospel more directly, is what he said, salvation by grace alone. His message resonated with hundreds, and his community began to change, but eventually thousands of conversions were taking place, and later this awakening would sweep our nation and would be considered the beginnings of America's first Great Awakening. What is interesting to me is that the message was not simply to turn from your decadent, immoral ways. It was about the unconditional love of a Savior and salvation by grace through faith in His completed work. Now, how does that alter the immoral behavior of a community and eventually a nation? Well, when a person genuinely accepts the God of the Bible, I call it a physio-spiritual event happens. It is both physical and spiritual. The Holy Spirit of God indwells that person and they become someone, quite new. Now, this was happening in the early 1700s, and many believe it was this awakening to the God of the Bible that fostered our war for independence. But in the early 1800s, Charles Grandison Finney began preaching this similar message, and our second Great Awakening began. His preaching not only captured the hearts of people, but it was a direct denunciation of the church in that era. He said, and I quote, if immorality prevails in the land, the fault is ours in great degree. If there is a decay of conscience, the pulpit is responsible for it. Now, President Trump is about to rededicate our nation to this very God of our founding, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Could this be the beginnings of our next Great Awakening? And will it bring in America's golden age? Well, we'll see. Good morning, Mike Levine.
Good morning, Chuck.
So how are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, very interesting times we live in, Chuck. There's just so much going on. Unbelievable, right? I mean, the news cycle is a pipeline, right? I mean, it's just like, one time, a long time ago, Tim Sullivan got elected to the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. And then a couple of weeks into his tenure, I was talking to him on the phone. And I said, well, how is it, Tim? How you doing over there? He said, Mike, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And I would tell you that to keep up with the news cycle today is very much like drinking from a fire hose.
Well, there you go. And unfortunately, that fire hose is oftentimes contaminated.
Well, I would suggest, from my perspective, that I personally believe that America is heading more in the right direction today than really at any point in my adult life, I would suggest, Chuck.
Well, that's my feeling as well. Yeah.
So again, you can take a look at it, and just since Pam Bondi has stepped down from the Department of Justice, from the Attorney General's slot, the prosecutions on a lot of January 6th stuff, the Russia hoax stuff is moving quite along. This guy, Todd Blanche, is he's got his foot on the gas pedal, and you can see that Kash Patel, too, is really getting moving things along. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll see, we're being promised today that we're going to see some stuff done that the MAGA base, has been clamoring for a very long time. So it is amazing. It's sad to say, honestly, somebody like Pam Bondi, who we would have loved to embrace and celebrate, if Todd Blanche gets all these things done, then we will realize that Pam Bondi was the problem, which I personally believe that's true. Even though I would love to love Pam Bondi, she just wasn't getting the job done for us, and I believe Todd Blanche is going to do it. So and I think he's a better partner for Kash. So that's that. And of course, we could get into all that's going on in Iran and Israel and Lebanon and all that, which I'm following very closely. But so yeah, I'm thinking that under this president, the world is moving more in the direction that I would like for it to go than at any time in my adult life, Chuck.
Well, I agree, Mike. I do feel like there's something very, very exciting getting ready to happen. And I think that is when integrity is in the White House. And I don't care what his opponents say. He's the most direct and honest president we've seen maybe since President Reagan. And that, along with his, even though he doesn't really quite understand the Christian faith, and he really all of a sudden has this interest in God, and he really wants to do the right thing. And it's hard for me to know for certain that his rededication is from a spiritually foundational place. I don't think any of that matters. The fact that he wants to do it is powerful for the nation. But the nation's going to have to respond. There's got to be something from we the people that resonates with this rededication. And if so, I believe that President Trump's going to have a headwind, a tailwind that's going to send him so far and so fast that it's going to make the world's head spin.
Well, we need to do it now, and that's kind of the pressure, right? I mean, I don't want to get into all of the details associated with what's going on in Iran right now, but I guess just one talking point on that subject. The United States Navy just interdicted an Iranian ship coming from China that was carrying weapons of mass destruction. The Marine, we boarded the ship, took the ship, right, to enforce the blockade. Hopefully our audience is following that enough to realize there is a blockade going on. But, some people don't, you never know. So God bless you all, but anyway, I think that's I just love that President Trump has taken the guardrails off of our military, Chuck.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's amazing things happening all over the world, but right here in Florida, there's some very important things that we need to be discussing as well. So today we're going to kind of talk about some gubernatorial candidates. You have, as what's scrolling below us there on the lower third, the meeting here tonight in Mount Dora. I don't know if you want to comment on that before we get going.
Right. So, very interesting. Chuck, you and I were at the Republican Party of Florida quarterly meeting in October, and you and I were sitting in the State Committee Man and State Committee Woman caucus meeting, which was not much of a caucus, if you ask me. But Paul Renner was the speaker at that particular caucus, and you and I had an opportunity to have a one-on-one, or with the candidate, gubernatorial candidate Paul Renner. So tonight, candidate Renner is going to be speaking at the Country Club of Mount Dora, which, if you follow the scroll bar below the video we're running right now, you'll see that that's located at 1900 Country Club Boulevard in Mount Dora, right off of Highway 441. It's very easy to find. If you're coming from anywhere, well, anyway, I don't want to get too much into the details. Put it in your GPS. It's easy to find. And then, you'll be able to come out. This guy, he was the Speaker of the House. He was elected he was elevated to Speaker of the House in November 2022 and oversaw the legislative sessions in 2023 and 2024. And then, Chuck, I just really want to understand the thing about Paul Renner is that he has a very descriptive track record, Chuck. Yeah. And if you want to know who Paul Renner is, he's very easy to understand. If you don't mind reading or all or some in, of the legislative summaries for legislative session 2023 and 2024. That will tell you exactly who Paul Renner is. He has I call it his report card. The executive summary of the legislative session 2023 and 2024 is Paul Renner's report card, and a very good indicator of what you'll get if you elect Paul Renner to be the governor of the state of Florida. So that's great news if you're trying to understand candidates. Chuck, we do have to be kind of conscious of time, but if you wouldn't mind, if you can just run people through how to find that on the flhouse.gov website. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know what's... Go ahead,
I'm
Chuck.
going to get it up here next to you, and I'm kind of at the end here, but let's go ahead and start out with floridahouse.gov.
From the home page, right, Chuck?
Yeah, I'm going right now. floridahouse.gov. Let's see here.
flhouse.gov. No, you're good. I'm not trying to micromanage the process here, Chuck.
Okay. floridahouse.gov. Okay, so you tell me, where do you want me to go next? We go over to...
Well, the next, I believe, is the publications page, right?
Publications,
top
which
scroll
is
bar.
over here.
Right, go to publications, right?
Okay.
Now you have an opportunity to select which legislative session you would like to see publications concerning.
It's right here.
So you hit the drop-down box, and now you can look in the special sessions, too. There were special sessions during 2023 and 2024. But for the sake of this exercise, Chuck, we're just going to go to the general session 2024.
Regular session, right?
Regular session, correct.
Right.
Right.
And there we are. Okay. Regular session, here we go.
Right. So now you're going to go to, what is it? The top, on the top left there, under session, you're going to say all publications, right? On the top left corner there, under the black bar.
Top.
Is that what it says?
It says session, all public, I'm sorry, here we go.
Yeah,
Under
all
sessions.
publications, right there.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Right.
There we go.
And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, or close to the bottom, so you're going to see they're going to detail every day of session right there. You don't need that. Just keep scrolling, and then you'll come up with, see the publications bar right there? It'll say whatever that says, Chuck.
End of session summary.
Yeah, end of session summary. That's what you're looking for.
And that
Right.
says 2024 end of session summary. You click on that.
Click on that, and
Boom.
you get
You
well
get
over
it.
300 pages of all of the legislation that passed, descriptions, the actual bills are in there. The appropriations list for that year is in there. You can see, where the state of Florida spent its money, etc. So if you want to know what Paul Renner is all about, there is a 300 and change page document that will tell you who Paul Renner is. Yes, it's not easy reading for people who do not do this on a regular basis. But if you have a particular area of interest, like whether it's elderly affairs or state affairs, or for me personally, I think housing is a big deal in our economy. I pay close attention to what's going on in the housing market. I'm a realtor. So, that's a good place to go if you just want to kind of figure out who Paul Renner is. And that's a great thing about Paul Renner, is we do know who he is. He presided over 2 legislative sessions, number 1, 2023, and second in 2024. So this is Paul Renner's 2024 report card. You get to decide whether Paul Renner's a good guy or not after you read those pages.
There we go.
Move
And
us to the
of course,
next
you've read a lot of
talking
them,
point.
Mike. You've read a lot of those pages. Maybe not all of them.
To be honest with you, I wish I could do nothing else, Chuck. I'll be honest with you. I mean, this is the heart, the pulse of everything that's happening in the world. Okay, those are the receipts, Chuck. I mean, if you want to talk about bringing the receipts, those are Paul Renner's receipts. And you should be able to ask him questions about every single bill that passed through the Florida House in 2023 and 2024, and he should be able to explain to you why that bill passed, because he allowed it to happen. He could have prevented any one of those bills from coming to the floor, right? So a lot of good stuff happened during those years, but some bad stuff happened too, Chuck. This is a mixed bag, and we'll get into it as we talk about the candidates who are running. I'll have an opportunity to express myself on the mindset of each of these candidates as we walk through them, Chuck.
There you go. Well, we'll do a little bit of everything. I just have a quick question from one of our viewers. Are you saying that this is what he did all by himself? And of course, not necessarily all by himself, but he allowed it, right?
I'm telling you something, ladies and gentlemen. There's 3 people who determine what happens in the state of Florida, period. Okay? The legislators have very little to do with it, frankly. The Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate determines what comes to the floor and what doesn't. They'll tell you. Those legislators literally ask permission to file legislation. Either if they're a senator, they ask the President of the Senate. If they're a state rep, they ask permission from the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House either tells them, yeah, go ahead and file the bill. I'm not sure it's going to come to the floor. I may or may not give it committee assignments, but I'm not opposed to you filing the bill. And that gives them permission. If the leader says, no, don't file the bill, and the legislator files it anyway, you go to the basement, you get your lunch card stripped of you, your home district doesn't get any appropriations for any of the projects you need at home, and you are punished severely. So did Paul Renner allow this to happen by himself? Short answer, yes.
There you go. So one other question from John, a viewer, listeners. He's asking what, and we're going to get into the gubernatorial race here soon, but he asked, what can we do about the Republican Party and bad candidates like Corey Mills? Now, he's obviously assuming we believe Corey Mills is a bad candidate. I don't know. What say you, Mike Levine?
Well, Chuck, I have offered to solve this problem on multiple occasions. Okay? So here's the answer. The answer is that we need a small team. I'm talking maybe 5 people in every single county that does nothing more than report on the activities of the legislative delegation in their county. And then those people, like, for example, there's 67 counties in the state of Florida. So if we had 5 people in each county, keep in mind that the legislative delegations overlap county lines. So you would literally have duplicative reporting, but that's good. Okay, so if we had 5 people in every county, we'd have 335 people, small number. I mean, the Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida, the Florida Republican Assembly, the associate, what is it, APEC, whatever that is,
APEC,
Associated Executive Committee. Yeah, all those. They would all want to have, it's a statewide organization. You telling me you can't get 335 people to join your organization in the whole state of Florida? You're not a statewide organization. You're an anomaly. So 335 people, they all weigh in on what every single legislator in the state of Florida is doing. And then we go and we just let people know. It's so easy we have all the communications devices in the world. We're doing it right now on this live. We're doing it right now. We're holding people accountable right now. So if we analyze everything that everybody does and we put a hot spotlight on it, and then we communicate with the legislators and say, we either love what you're doing or we hate it, and you better change course or we will replace you. That's the only way to get this under control. I mean, that's the only way. And if we don't do that, this is what our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents should have been doing since World War II. But we've taken our liberty for granted for so long and this is what we have to do. We just have to start doing it right. And what that means is that we have to educate the government in the state of Florida and the United States of America that they actually report to us. And if we never hold them accountable, then they will never get the message. And if you can't beat them at the ballot box, you lose. That's the answer, Chuck.
There we go. Well, our time is just flying by. We've mentioned Paul Renner. I don't know if we want to jump to the next person on our list, but we have about.
Let's see what we got here. We got 10 minutes. So let's just, okay, we'll fly through that. I mean, we won't pay much attention to it, obviously, because we don't have time. 10 minutes, that's 2 minutes per candidate. And there's 45 candidates filed to run for governor, Chuck. I mean, we're talking about, basically the people that we expect to be competitive in August, really, because we're talking about the Republican primary. We're not even talking about the Democrats or the Libertarians or the no party affiliation candidates or any of that. Yeah. We're just talking about what we think are the top 5 Republican candidates going into the primary. And we're assuming that we're not going to have any competition in the general, which I think is very dangerous, Chuck.
There we go. Well, let's just throw Byron Donalds out there and ask some questions or make some comments. What do you say, Mike?
Byron Donalds is a big picture guy. So, years ago, I thought, based on what was going on in New York, that we should just move the financial center of the United States of America to Orlando. And Byron Donalds agrees with that. Although that is a very macro view of what the governor needs to be doing, and we need some micro stuff here too. So for you, I would say, like, for example, moving the whole space program to Titusville, right, to the Kennedy Space Center. I think that's a really good idea, and I think that's something that Byron Donalds would support. But my concern is that Byron Donalds is not going to address affordable housing. He's not going to address cost of living issues. It's going to get more expensive to live in Florida under Byron Donalds, not less expensive. So that's a concern that I have about Byron. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say right now, Chuck, that I am undecided on who I'm going to vote for governor. Okay, I'm not supporting or opposed to necessarily any of them. I would say I'm more likely to be opposed to one or the other, but I have not made a decision who I'm going to vote for.
Well, from what I understand, Byron Donalds does believe that the 2020 elections was an honest election and there was nothing fraudulent about that. And that, I don't know, that kind of bothers me.
No, that's a deal breaker. That is a deal breaker. I mean, if you can't have fair elections, Chuck, you can't, our republic is dead.
Right. There you go. There you go. Well, James Fishback, any direct comments about James Fishback?
Yeah, I've been watching James Fishback. I met him a few times out in the field. James Fishback and I have our differences, but I'll be honest, James Fishback, if you believe his talking points, and if he could get everything done that he wants to get done, then I would say he's my favorite of them all. But unfortunately, I don't trust James Fishback, and I don't believe he can get the things done that he'd like to get done. I believe that if James Fishback was the governor, you'd see the biggest rebellion out of the Florida legislature you've ever seen in your life. And I just don't believe James Fishback can get it done. But theoretically, I believe James Fishback, who is a professional debater, that's his strength. And I wouldn't be surprised if James Fishback gets his talking points from artificial intelligence, Chuck.
Okay, well, we'll keep that in mind as well. I know we're just kind of touching base on all these. Maybe we can do a deeper dive Thursday. But we've talked about Paul Renner, so let's jump over to Jay Collins. What are your brief thoughts about Jay Collins?
Well, Jay Collins, obviously, you have to respect his military service. He's definitely paid the price for this country. He's an amputee, right? I mean, so that's, just brutal what he's been through. And then he requalified to be in special forces with his injuries. So you got to give the guy credit. So I would just suggest with Jay Collins, and of course, then you get the political side of Jay Collins and his family and all that, which I believe is valid also. So if you want to know who Jay Collins is, you can do the same thing we just did with the legislative summary. You can pop over to the Florida Senate, I guess, and you can just Google up Jay Collins's record. You can see every bill that he ever sponsored, every committee he ever sat on, how he voted on every bill. And I don't think Jay Collins would be the worst thing in the world for the state of Florida, but even Ron DeSantis is backing off of Jay Collins, and he appointed Jay Collins to be lieutenant governor. So what does that tell you? That Ron DeSantis is not endorsing Jay Collins. You would have thought that he would have done that unless, of course, you believe that Casey DeSantis is going to throw her hat in the ring, which she has not done so far. So I'm a neutral on Jay Collins. I don't love or hate Jay Collins. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, well, the last one on my list of our five is Bobby Williams. Kind of a new face to some degree, right?
Well, you know, Bobby Williams is a authentic guy from Polk County, Florida. He's done a lot in the not-for-profit space. He's fed, I don't know how many families, but I'm sure he would say hundreds of thousands of families, right? He's done a lot. And the nice thing about, like, for example, if you take a look at, I like to go to to Rick Scott, right? Rick Scott ran for governor. He had never held public office before. You know, you can say what you want about Rick Scott. I think Rick Scott did some bad things when he was governor, but he did a lot of good things too. He saved Florida financially from the devastation left by Charlie Crist, which was an absolute train wreck. So I like Rick Scott overall. And then you take Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump was elected president, never held public office before. I think the country's moving in the right direction, and we couldn't really, we couldn't have a better president. Let's just say that. Okay. So Bobby Williams falls into that category. He's running for governor, never held public office. I think he's a very genuine guy. And I think that he definitely, of all the candidates, he really does have the heart and the best interests of the people of the state of Florida at heart more, I would suggest, than any of the others. And then you and I discussed off camera that when you take Byron Donalds, Jay Collins, and Paul Renner, you've got candidates with a track record. So you can easily see who they are, what they're about. Now, a lot of people fall in the trap of just saying, well, this guy or that guy, girl, can't win, so I'm going to support the most likely victor, because what I really want is to have a good relationship with the governor, no matter who the governor is. So it's not about that you're ideologically aligned with the candidate you're supporting. It's more about, I want to have a relationship, or my organization wants to have a relationship with the candidate, so I'm going to support the candidate whether I believe the candidate is the best candidate or not, Chuck. And that is a lot of what's going on in this particular race. Donald Trump has Byron Donalds has the endorsement of Donald Trump, and Byron Donalds is by far the biggest fundraising leader. So the influencers in the state of Florida just assuming that Byron Donalds is going to be the governor, so they get on the Byron Donalds train, Chuck, and that's kind of what I see happening here.
Yeah, I guess that's. I think that's pretty standard. Most people want to vote for the winner rather than vote for the person who they feel most familiar with, or most like their policies, etc. It's very, very sad, especially when the primary is when we need to do that. It's the primary election that we really do need to send a message. You know, even if like for instance, if you feel Bobby Williams is the guy because he's the one that's going to be most concerned with the local, the people, the average electorate out there, then even if he doesn't win, he needs to get a lot of votes so that somebody who's paying attention to these votes realize how close maybe he came. So we need to be voting for the person that really does represent what we feel Florida needs, each of us individually, in this primary election.
Well, I just want to say, Chuck, maybe these are my closing comments. Who knows?
Well,
how much time we got
yeah,
here?
you can make them the closing comments. We're right there, so go right ahead, Mike.
This gubernatorial race is the most important thing we have on our plate right now in the state of Florida. We have to pick the right candidate, and then Republicans seem to think that there's no competition for these positions anymore, and I think we're going to get a wake-up call in November. Whether that means that we're going to lose the gubernatorial race, I don't think that's true. I think we'll win the governorship, but I do believe that we're going to bleed some House seats. And then remember that the Democrats, when we start looking at which of these candidates we think is most likely to defeat the opposition in November, just remember when you take a look at the background and the history of these candidates, that the opponents are going to come after these guys and girls. So well, some of these people have some baggage, and you've got to think about what kind of postcards you're going to get in your mailbox in going into the November election based on which candidates are running. So you've got to determine, who's clean and who isn't, and who's electable to a degree. But I agree with you, Chuck, that we really just need to elect the person that we think will do the best for the state of Florida. And just remember that we all don't agree on what's best for the state of Florida. Every special interest thinks that whatever's good for their interest is what's good for Florida, and I totally disagree with that. I'm a median household income family supporter because I know that rising tides lift all ships. So I'm interested in making life affordable for median household income families. I want to raise disposable income for Floridians, and that's what I'd like to see done. That's the candidate that I'm going to support in the end once I make up my mind who I'm going to support. That's what's most important to me. And then you do have to look at it and say, can this candidate get the job done if elected? That's a big deal. So that's what I would say, Chuck. Those are my closing remarks.
Well, super. I thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this gubernatorial race more in the near future. So thank you, Mike, and thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restore Our Rep 76. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.